Well, it's been a while since we have covered the voice of a champion, because to be honest, the past few champions didn't really have interesting voice lines. They were all related to Ruination, we already knew the story behind that, and for the most part they were all pre-established champions, so we knew what to expect from them. Then came in Zeri, who was a decent change when it comes to the appearance of a champion, but her voice lines were still kinda there. They were cool, but nothing that would stand out. And then came in Renata. At first I thought that she had a few interesting interactions, but then as I went through her voice lines, I realized that, after a long while, Riot did it again. They used the champions' voice lines in-game to explain their lore as you play them. So as you'll see, even if you haven't read Renata's lore, after playing her, she will tell you the most interesting parts in-game. And so today, not only do I want to talk about the interesting interactions with other champions, but I will also explain all the lines that directly come from her lore. So without further ado, let's have a look at the voice lines of Renata Glasc. And as always, all hail Skin Spotlights for making this possible.
2 alchemists were murdered over 30 years ago, Camille. Do you remember them?
Right at the very beginning, she has a really cool interaction with Camille. That's because Riot is trying to set up Renata and Camille as the main rivals. And so, in the distant future, when we get an event where Renata tries to take over Piltover and Zaun, Camille might be the main hero of the story that stands against her. Regardless, in this voice line, she did tease that Camille might have been the assassin that was hired to kill Renata's parents. This is where some people in the lore community also pointed out a really interesting thing. In Vi's bio, it is mentioned that she was found in a ruined chem lab. And in Camille's voice line, she teases that she was the one who killed Vi's parents, unlike what happened in Arcane. And because Renata mentioned that it all happened over 30 years ago, it lines up with Vi's age too. So it is definitely possible that not only did Camille kill Renata's parents, but she also killed Vi's parents, and that Vi was found in an old Glasc workshop.
How were your parents, Ekko? If only you'd let me help them.
This voice line was explained in Zeri's story. In her color story, after Zeri freed some people from a workshop, we learned that the workshop was owned by Renata, and we learned that Ekko's parents were being held there as well. And it seems like here, Renata is mentioning that her medicine can help them. Ekko just really doesn't trust chem barons.
Where were you when we needed you most, Janna?
Of course, if you don't know the story of Janna, Janna is an ancient spirit of wind. Many years ago, when Zaun was still part of the Shuriman Empire, and it was known as Oshrava Zaun, this city worshipped Janna. Partially it's because this was a trade city, and so a lot of ships sailed from here. And of course, ships rely on wind. Of course, many years later, when Zaun exploded in a massive accident, which separated the city into Piltover and Zaun was filled with chemical fumes, people prayed to Janna because they were hoping the spirit would give them some fresh air. But as some of you may know, by then, because Azir destroyed all of her statues, a lot of people stopped worshipping Janna, and so Janna lost her power. That's why Janna couldn't help Zaun during the accident.
Entertaining as you are, Jinx, you're wasting both your time and your talent.
This line against Jinx is interesting because she's not just talking about Jinx being crazy. She's mentioning that she's wasting her talent because you may remember that Jinx was actually a really good engineer. The funny thing about that is, that part is not actually mentioned in Jinx's bio. We only know that because that's what happened in Arcane. Even when she was going crazy, she was still able to weaponize Hextech, which not a lot of people managed to do. But yeah, since only traces of Arcane are canon for the core universe, technically Renata is revealing something the core universe doesn't know about. That Jinx is actually smart.
I bankrolled your pistol's makers, Samira. Those guns are mine by right.
With this line, Renata might be talking about 2 different people. Either she is talking about the Black Rose, because it was the Black Rose that got Samira the most advanced weapons in the Empire. But technically, those weapons were crafted by specific smiths, and those 2 were shown in Samira's story. So it is possible that their little workshop where they made those guns, which is in Noxus but it is still close to Piltover, yeah, it is possible that their workshop was kickstarted with Renata's fundings.
Sing your little songs of unity while you can, traitor.
At this point, Riot is in on the joke, and they are making fun of Seraphine, despite the fact that originally she was supposed to be this all-inspiring person in Piltover. But Renata doesn't seem to be uplifted by her.
We could have done great work together, Singed. Pity.
Of course, just like Renata's parents, but not Renata herself, Singed is a great alchemist. He could have easily replaced her parents.
Piltover will fall to me, Swain, not to Noxus.
Of course, if you know what's been recently happening in Piltover, you know that Noxus is trying to actively infiltrate the clans of Piltover. Specifically, Clan Medarda already has a Noxian spy inside.
You forget whose money made you what you are, Victor.
Of course, after Victor was kicked out of the University of Piltover, as he was working on his inventions down in Zaun, he had to get his fundings somewhere. So it makes sense that Renata was the one who helped him out.
Doesn't matter how loud you bark or how hard you bite, Vi. A lapdog's a lapdog.
Here, I don't think this is a reference to Vander. Yes, Arcane is not canon in the core universe, but if Vander turns out to be Warwick, he has to be real. But still, she's calling her a lapdog because now Vi is working for Caitlyn.
Zeri, perhaps I might have been more like you if my parents had survived. Poor and weak.
Of course, she's mad at Zeri because Zeri is constantly destroying her workshops.
Give my parents my love, won't you?
Of course, in this line, she may sound a bit aggressive when mentioning her parents, but that's because she's killing someone. In reality, we know that she still cared about her parents. In her story, she lost her arm when she was trying to save her parents. She wouldn't try to save her parents if she didn't care about them.
Finally, I can see them again.
Also, this serves as a proof that she cared about them.
I mean, it's one health potion. What could it cost? 10,000 gold?
Of course, this is based on the fact that rich people have no idea how much things cost.
Ah, good. I can write this off as a business expense.
The life of a creator.
The difference between medicine and poison is the dosage. Allow me to demonstrate.
This is actually a mirroring reference to Camille's voice line.
Precision is the difference between a butcher and a surgeon.
Every fashionable Piltovan owns at least one of my products. So trusting, so naive.
Of course, every noble person in Piltover and Zaun owns one of Renata's products. And those products have hidden chemicals inside them. And at the right time, Renata can activate them and, to some degree, mind control them. But more than that, everyone just goes insane.
I remember starving in the sump, a pathetic little nothing of a girl. Look at me now!
This line was directly referenced in her bio. Because her parents were so generous to other people, oftentimes their own daughter, Renata, didn't even have anything to eat.
When my parents handed out their cures, they asked for nothing. So we had nothing. Kind, but foolish.
This can also be directly found in her story. As I mentioned, this is the reason why Renata often went hungry.
Piltover coos over perfumes, while Zaun struggles to breathe.
The irony is in the fact that one of Renata's products is also perfumes.
I gave out breathers in exchange for Zaun's loyalty. Those dividends are priceless.
Once again, this directly comes from her story. During a massive chemical disaster, most likely the same one that corrupted Oriana's body, and the same one that made Victor and Blitzcrank team up, she gave her breathing masks to people for free, because that's how she would, indirectly, buy the loyalty of people of Zaun.
I provide people with two options. Do what I want, or do what I want but with more steps.
Here, I don't think she would be talking about the fact that she would be brutally beating people. Instead, once again, she mentioned in her bio that either when you get something from Renata, you pay the price, or if you can't afford it, you swear your loyalty.
Nothing's free. All I ask is your loyalty.
That's exactly what I just mentioned.
She who controls the Sun Gate controls the world.
Once again, this is a direct quote from her story. The Sun Gates connect the eastern and western parts of the continent. If you want something to be delivered from one side of the world to the other, it has to go through the Sun Gates. Otherwise, the travel time is 5 times longer.
No one even thought to invest in Chemtech before I did.
Now, this wasn't actually mentioned in her bio, so I wonder if this means that Renata was actually one of the first ones who invented Chemtech. We know that the reason why all of her Chemtech is pink is because it is not shimmer, but rather that's the color you get when you refine Chemtech. As a fun fact, it is an inversion of the Chemtech colors.
I used to have rivals, now I have business partners.
And that's another thing. Even though she didn't start as a Chem Baron, she sort of just became one over time, because whenever she wanted to do something, she approached the other Chem Barons and she persuaded them to join her. So Renata doesn't have enemies not only because of her influence and because people would be afraid of going against her, but because that's where her power came from in the first place. She made the other Chem Barons to work with her. And that's pretty much it for Renata's quotes. I'm just really happy with what Riot did with her. I believe the first one who really did this was Mordekaiser. His quote started teasing people with his lore, and so after playing him, some people got interested in the story behind him. And then came in more and more champions who simply started explaining their own story in the game. This is the best way you can utilize voice lines. If you don't really give them purpose, voice lines would be meaningless. They have to do one of two things. Either they enhance the champion's character, or they teach their lore to the people who are too lazy to read. But then, there are champions who might be doing neither. I wonder if that's gonna come back next.